Yan! Hello, hello! Kamusta kayo dyan, mga ka-meta, mga ka-YouTubers, mga ka-Darians? Wala na akong time na i-set up itong spacers na to on Twitter, kaya pasensya na, nakikita ko over space. People are asking us to make comments, including on Oppenheimer, of course, by Murphy, Cillian Murphy, one of the greatest actors that, at least I'm glad that has been finally getting the kind of appreciation that he deserves. Maybe another day we can do a book review. Today lang, I want to talk about quickly, no, about a couple of things or mga family duties, no, Tito duties, Tito duty calls, no. So I'll keep this a bit shorter than usual. Ganito. So over the past 24 hours or so, I've been following very closely what's happening in Thailand. At the same time, also we're following very closely what's happening here in the Philippines in terms of a recent parang national discourse, no, or national debate about religious respect, religious freedom, freedom of expression, and in one way or another, of course, related din ito sa LGBTQ community because of course, the incident that everyone knows, no, by now. Again, as a man of faith, right? Obviously, my take on issues comes from ganito kasi politically, I believe in pluralism, but socially speaking, I'm a more traditional person. Quite I would say quite more conservative than many people suppose. So my ideas on family values, my ideas about respect about religious institutions, my ideas about having some basic rituals of respect and respecting the dignity of sacred values. So medyo conservative on this issue. Kaya uh, I don't believe in absolute freedom of expression, right? I believe that freedom of expression should not be abused also to make insults against the fundamental beliefs of certain people, beliefs that are very close to their heart. So whatever religions, religious background you have, no. Now, pag-usapan natin mga to very, very quickly. I'll make sure na hindi masyadong all over the place itong sinasabi natin. Alam niyo naman, minsan we take on multiple issues at the same time, parang round robin style. So, let me quickly go through this, no? So, first of all, alam niyo na over the past 24 hours, no, there has been a lot of update about the situation dun sa Thailand, no? About, kasi this week na dapat ma-announce kung sino talaga magiging prime minister nila. And Pita, okay, that's how pala you pronounce it, not Pita. Pita, the very young prime ministerial candidate sa Thailand, he's really on the eve of announcing na he has formed a government together with Poi Thai Party, and is very optimistic that he has enough numbers in the lower house and in Senate to push this through. But mga at the last minute na naman, may mga efforts to bring down itong Thai rising political star by making mumbo jumbo issues about his past ownership in the media, making some mumbo jumbo issues about him insulting the monarchy or insulting the military and the key institutions. So, in light of that, no, in light of this uncertainty na etong tao na talaga napakahirap yung situation nila. Ang dami lang kinaharap. Dami nilang na-overcome over the past few years. No? Yung dati nilang party na ban, yung dati niyang partner kasama na ban from running office. So it's a second attempt at bringing more voice for the youth to the country. So he had actually a very emotional speech kanina, no? Na ang ganda ng quote sa kanya, no? Something along the lines of, when you're gonna vote tomorrow or later this week, make sure this reflects the hopes of the people rather than your own political interests and will, no. So the situation is quite tricky in Thailand, and having acknowledged that, may sinabi tayo yesterday dito, last night actually, over Twitter, may sinabi tayo na reminder lang ito sa opposition sa Pilipinas na please don't think that what you're facing is the worst in the world, that the disinformation problem you're facing is extremely unique, that ang opposition sa Pilipinas ang pinakakawawa, na kayo lang talaga nag-face ng problems. No, I was just saying, let's be honest, as much as, I have no illusions about trapo politics in the Philippines, political and election violence in the Philippines, as much as we acknowledge and we know that there's a disinformation problem in the Philippines, pero iba pa rin yung mga challenges na hinaharap ng ating mga hinaharap ng mga opposition, no? Sa iba't ibang bansa na kapaligid natin, including in Thailand. Because in the case of Thailand, it's not only the Trapo politicians you have to go against. Oh, they have a lot of Trapo politicians. It's not only populists like Taksin that you have to go against. You have to also take in consideration of my military junta there that has been conducting coup after coup after coup, more than a dozen coup over the past century. And they can disqualify you on less majest, or kunyari may sinabi ka lang, I mean, way worse even than the situation here, no, kung saan they can easily weaponize whatever you say you have insulted the king, and you can go to, you can end up in jail or be disqualified from running for office for a very long time based on the less majest laws. So, grabe yung mga obstacles na meron yung opposition in countries like Thailand. In countries lang naman like Malaysia, multiple occasions the current Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim was imprisoned, was marginalized, was denigrated, was attacked by, on things like sodomy charges, things that at least we don't have in the Philippines, and it's anything like that, no? So may sinabi tayo over Twitter na sana ma-appreciate yung mga opposition supporters sa Pilipinas na as difficult as the situation is in the Philippines, it's still nowhere close to what we have in neighboring countries. And yet, as I say, their opposition still was able to do very well. In the case of Malaysia, the opposition has already won. They formed the government under Anwar Ibrahim, who happens to be actually a fan and a supporter of Aquinos for a very long time. And in the case of Thailand, PITA, whose sister party in the Philippines is actually Akbayan, no? So the Future Forward Move Forward Party, it's a semi-social democratic party, so yung katapat nila sa Pilipinas Akbayan. They now have the most votes and are in the best position to form the next government, unless of course there's another major intervention by the military and all. So yun po yung konteksto ng conversation natin. But then again, something weird happened kanina nung tinignan natin in Twitter first thing in the day. On one hand, it looks like some people who matter, people who know what they're doing, people who are part of opposition, may mga messages sa atin na very appreciative and sabi nila, yes, Professor Idan or Mr. Idan, Richard, whatever, we appreciate where you're coming from, and we hope that we learn the right lessons from our neighbors na have been able to secure a certain degree of electoral success, even if they're facing semi-dictatorship situations or really non-democratic institutions. Unlike in the Philippines is a problematic democracy, a besieged democracy, but we don't have the kind of problems they have in Thailand and Malaysia. And speaking of disinformation, I really suggest dun sa mga ibang supporters ng opposition or yung mga pasikat dyan or mga feeling magaling dyan, magbasa kayo, mag-research kayo, mag-comparative analysis kayo. If sana nagbasa kayo ng mga sinasabi ko, no? Nagbasa kayo ng, even if you just bother to just listen to our vlogs or some of the interviews I had with leading experts from all around the world, kung sana lang, nagbasa kayo ng content, never mind may academic works, nagbasa lang kayo mga columns, mga vlogs lang natin, mga ganyan lang, nanonood lang sana kayo, nakinig lang kayo, di sana walang ignoramus na comments dyan. Kasi it was really, really frustrating. We see on one hand, of course, there are people who are in the thick of action, who have been facing very difficult situations of politics, and yet they seem to be quite appreciative. They're reaching out, and I appreciate that. Honestly, I'm also looking forward to interview people like, former professor Winnie Munsoro. Hopefully, we can get people like that also on board. I'm thinking of also reaching out and getting former Professor Clarita Carlos again for our podcasts and shows. So, I'm reaching out right and left. I'm very open. And when I make criticism, it's whatever camp you are, it's from position of love, because I care for democracy. And hindi ako into cancel culture, whether you work for this president or that president. As long as you're aware of what you have been doing, as long as you're honest about the shortcomings of each of this administration, as long as hindi ka fanatic, as long as hindi ka self-righteous and all of that, no problem. Let's continue the conversation. We're here to build bridges. Now, so going back to this, we had this quite annoying situation whereby some duwag, anonymous, feelingero, na pretentious na mga trolls dyan na sasabihin na simplistic daw yung mga arguments natin, etc. Tapos ibabash pa yung voters. My goodness, that's a very problematic mindset. Obviously, of course, we have problems with disinformation. Obviously, we can always do much, much better in terms of raising the levels of political awareness in the country. But to say that simplistic tayo, like, are you kidding me? Did this ignoramus bother to read even one of our books or academic works, right? You cannot get published academically or write academic books, etc. if you haven't, no, scrape the whole, the whole review of related literature. So obviously, mga hater to mga to. So I had to put these haters in the right place because to mga hater na ito, they are the ones who are preventing the opposition in the Philippines from moving forward in the best way possible, from really maximizing the pink movement that was, you know, kicked into action last year. Ito yung mga yan eh. Ito yung mga tao na aatakin ka basta any source of criticism. No matter how constructive, aatakin ka. Sabihin nila simplistic ka, sabihin nila parelevant ka, sabihin nila epal ka, sabihin... tapos ito mga duwag, right? They cannot even... I mean, and please lang, huwag kayong mag-feeling na Marcelo del Pilar or Ilustrado na nagsusulat ng Anonymous. No, no, no. We're not living in, Spanish colonialism period. And please lang, your level of output is nowhere close to, forget about Ilustrados, but, nowhere close to even a decent kind of political commentaries. I see a lot of voter bashing, a lot of elitista or middle class arrogance and feudalistic mindset. I see a lot of, pushing the burden to the other side and not looking in the mirror and seeing what are the shortcomings. And just to be absolutely clear, the reason why we're doing these vlogs and all is because na-realize ko rin kulang yung ginagawa namin, yung mga katulad namin na supposed public educators. Kulang lang yung ginagawa namin na just writing for mainstream columns, just going on mainstream media. I realize na we have to, dapat sumabak din kami dito sa counter disinformation, dito sa political education, dito sa raising the level of public discourse and understanding of complex policy issues. So, lahat ng ginagawa natin is because we recognize we should do better. We can do better. So, ako when I criticize, it is not because I just want to criticize, because I know we can do better. And because I am also constantly pushing myself to get out of my comfort zone. Ang comfort zone po natin is interviews on the CNNs and BBCs of this world, writing for the New York Times and foreign. Yun po yung comfort zone natin. Or in the academic world, some of you have seen on my YouTube, yung lectures natin, you can see how happy I am, how at ease I am when I present lectures. Yes, of course, my comfort zone is the academic intellectual world. Just look at, for instance, my podcast with Leloy, Dr. Claudio from UC Berkeley. You can clearly see how both of us are very at home with that level of discussion. We love it. But I had to get out of my comfort zone because I realized, okay, as good as it is na kami mga academics, kami mga supposed intellectuals nag-uusap, this is not, getting out. And we are leaving the battlefield to the Maharlika types of this world. You get what I'm saying? I'm talking about the blogger, obviously, not the ancient warrior, Kshatriya versions of the Philippines. You get what I'm saying? So ako, when I criticize my comment, it's because I also push myself, because I know we can do better. Because I know instead of ranting about lack of political education, political maturity, ranting about katrapuan, well, you have to fight it. And kung sana lang nakinig kayo sa akin, sana nanonood kayo ng vlog natin, nakinig kayo dun sa mga guests natin like Dr. Belly, etc., di sana may natutunan pa kayo dun sa issues sa Thailand at ibang countries. And please lang, don't throw this nonsense about, they're incomparable apples and oranges. No, this is a question of degrees. The level of difficulties the opposition is facing in other countries like Thailand, Malaysia. Forget about Russia, China, I don't know, Turkey, whatever. Just yung mga kapitbahay natin, the level of opposition, the level of obstacles the opposition facing is next level. So this is a question of degrees, not type, right? Type of challenges and obstacles. So, yun lang talaga mga kahidarians, Kameta, etc. I know there are people who want to dismiss me or want to cancel me and say, ito mayabang yan, ganun. Like, yes, sometimes I know I sound like that, but I'm sorry to say, I have no patience for mata pobre, elitist nonsense. Especially from people who feel na kung sino sila, wala naman silang deep political analysis or whatever. These are clearly people who are super satisfied with whatever education degrees they got, but they never bother to really publish, forget about publish, or they never bother to even read quality stuff on comparative politics. I doubt these people are really aware of the basics of what's happening in Thailand, Malaysia, forget about other countries all around the world, where the opposition, they face potential execution, they face all sorts of horrible things. Now, clearly, I appreciated an intervention dun sa may isang na-comment, okay, pero sabi niya, pero what about yung left, yung progressive Philippines na red tag and nagfa-face ng very difficult situation? Well, have you noticed? Yung mga progressive groups, hindi nagrarant. Have you noticed people like Walden Bello or Calyodi? Napansin mo ba? They never blame the voters. They never blame the voters. Their supporters, they're not toxic. They don't go out there and try to cancel culture. They always coming from the position of compassion. And guess what? Calyodis, Kawaldens, even the Rizon Tiveros of this world, instead of always saying, oh, kawawa tayo, tayong pinang... No! They go out there, they get inspired, and they inspire others. They're aware of the challenges that reformists and revolutionaries and progressives face, from Russia at the dawn of the 20th century to Russia of today with the Navalny's of this world. So when I talk about opposition, I really mean the mainstream liberal opposition. I hope they learn something from the left and the progressives who never whine, who never rant, who mobilize, who learn the best lessons possible from all different countries all around the world, right? And instead of engaging in cancel culture, they build coalitions. So for instance, si PITA, in the case of Thailand, is trying to build a coalition with the Pheu Thai party of Thaksin, even if he doesn't agree with their kind of populist katrapuan. Because you have to get the government together. You have to push for reforms. Or in the case, for instance, ng Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim had to make some very difficult political choices. Very difficult political choices. And kasama dun sa difficult political choices na yan is, teaming up with remnants of the Aung San regime, including his former nemesis and former co-party mates before, they try to marginalize him through all sorts of mumbo-jumbo cases. So politics is about difficult and ugly choices, but that's where sacrifice comes in. That's where decisive leadership comes in. That's where coalition building comes in. So all I'm saying here is denialism, toxic cancel culture, thinking na tayo lang nahihirapan, thinking na tayo lang may disinform problem, and worst of all, voter blaming. This is not gonna help. Now, again, I completely agree there's a disinformation problem. I empathize with our friends, with people who feel that there's not enough appreciation of good governance or reformist kind of candidates or platforms. I understand. But that's why with compassion, with dedication, we have to build movements. We have to learn from other countries. You think wala silang problema na katrapuan sa Malaysia and Thailand? You think wala silang problema na disinformation sa Thailand? You think they didn't have to face all sorts of harassments or even worse? No, come on. Come on. Seriously. So, and I can even talk about Indonesia, which is an interesting case, which is even more similar to the Philippines. But all I'm saying, mga kameta, Kaspacers, is that compassion is very important. Humility is a very important thing. Yeah, I know you can raise humility. No, if you're sincerely humble, you're willing to accept and you're willing to change accordingly. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, because I realize kulang yung mga ginagawa natin. Hindi lang pwede maging academic, hindi lang pwede intellectual, hindi lang pwede nandun ka sa New York Times and all sorts of. No, you have to write, you have to engage, you have to vlog. You have to be open to criticisms. I respond on Twitter, I respond to Facebook, etc. And I call out nonsense. And sometimes I have no time for being too nice and diplomatic when I see nonsense. When I see toxicity, denialism, because it's not gonna help. Kung gusto natin tulungan yung ating mga kababayan, we have to understand bakit sila bumoboto ng mga leaders na meron tayo. And to say it's just all disinformation, you're forgetting a lot of other factors. Maybe when reformists were in charge, they didn't do good enough. Maybe you want to consider that. Maybe the campaign strategy last year was not optimal. Maybe there were also contingent factors like Uniteam, which was not a given. Had both Sara and BBM run, it could have been a different world. Maybe we're not learning enough from other countries. Maybe there are too many toxic vloggers, etc., which are giving a bad name to the opposition. So you have to get outside that echo chamber. You have to get outside those excuses and denialism. Again, it is real, but to explain the entire thing as disinformation, or in some cases explain the entire thing as just SD card, I don't know, sa elections, I don't know. You're not gonna win over the Filipino people that way. You're not gonna be in a position of power to help people if you don't look at the very basics here. Alright? So, yun lang sinasabi ko. Ito na advice ko sa manood kayo ng Navalny. Watch yung documentary Navalny sa HBO Go. Mura lang yung HBO Go, 200 pesos lang yan sa Globe every day. Wag na kayo manood kayo ng mga ng mga documentaries about these young leaders, opposition leaders, and look at what they have to deal with. Right? It's way worse way way worse than many of people, who think that sila lang and or getting, you know what I'm saying, right? Connect the dots. Now, that's also the reason why I have tremendous amount of appreciation for people like Leila de Lima, Senator Leila de Lima, because of all opposition leaders, you could say that she has made the biggest sacrifice. Again, I'm talking about mainstream opposition leaders. Iba pang usapan yung mga naretag from left, from progressive groups. But in the mainstream opposition, Leila de Lima has made the greatest sacrifice, and that's why she deserves the greatest recognition, respect of any of the opposition leaders in terms of, again, in terms of the political sacrifice and courage aspect, etc. And how I wish that brave women like not only Leila de Lima but Rizal Tiveros, others get more attention, get more support, get more respect. And again, the whole point is this: sayang, last year ang daming na mobilized for the pink movement. Millions showed up on the street. I'm not sure what happened, bakit walang follow through on this. Walang further mobilization on this. I don't know who slept on the wheel. I don't know who slept on the in terms of doing just the basics of of translating that into a long-term movement for good governance, and down the road also for electoral reform, and also for getting right people into office, not only at the national level, at the local level, barangay, sangguniang kabataan, kongreso, governor, yung mga different position, not necessarily in Luzon, could be in Visayas, Mindanao, etc. So there's ganito na lang. Let me end on this point. Last year we saw the potential of what opposition could be with all of those people showing up, with the whole pink movement. But over the past, we also saw that you cannot take that for granted. And that denialism, self-righteousness, cancel culture, condescension towards voters, none of that is going to help to make the most out of the great movement for reform and good governance that was born last year, the so-called pink movement. On that note, thank you very much, guys. I wanted to talk more about other issues and all, but I can already hear the church bells here. So I don't want to talk more politics and all out of respect. There's a church bell there. But of course, you know what other topic I wanted to talk about. Maybe another day. Yun lang. Yes, democracy tayo. Less pluralistic tayo. Pero sana naman, basic respect lang sa mga religious institutions natin, etc. We may not agree on religious doctrine or our theological arguments. It's okay, but basic respect lang. All right, basic respect lang. Yun lang sana. On that note, thank you very much, and I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless.